Creating an interesting or new horror idea is a relatively difficult concept nowadays, but that's exactly what the creators of Among the Sleep were able to do when they created a first-person perspective horror game with puzzle elements where you play as a 2-year-old. The game has now made it over to the PlayStation 4, but does this toddler-based horror game have enough to scare up a good time, or is it worse than crying yourself to sleep? A game featuring a main character that's a young child or a baby is something not seen all that often in games, and probably for good reason. In fact, heck, I can't remember that many since the NES days with likes of Baby Boomer or the Japanese-only Bio Miracle Oopa. Either way, Among the Sleep not only presents that interesting concept with the child main character, it does so quite well. The game starts off on the child's birthday. Soon after the beginning opening cutscene, you're taken to your bedroom where you're given the opportunity to explore. Quickly, you're given the basics of the controls on how to crawl around, run, climb on objects, and pick them up and interact with various things. Soon after, you're introduced to your present, which is a small teddy bear named Teddy, who ends up guiding you along your way and works as kind of not only your companion, but your safeguard against the horrors that you're going to be traversing. After the intro, you're put to bed, and that's when the game truly starts to begin. The game is basically broken up into 4 different stages, with the ending of each stage basically finding a memento that you'll then put in a machine to open up a door which leads you to your next area until eventually you find all 4 of them and complete the game. You start off at night inside of the house, escaping your crib as it just magically tips over. As you're exploring the house itself, it's definitely a creepy atmosphere. This is a game that's much more psychological and atmospheric than it actually ends up having jump scares, but there are a few jump scares here and there for those who are into that, and the whole stealth element that comes into the game later if you end up getting spotted has a little bit of a jump scare to it, but for the most part, the game's horror elements are much more about the atmosphere. Since you are playing as a toddler in the game, most of the gameplay revolves around that. You have to push and pull objects, pull out drawers to get on the kitchen counters in order to interact with door handles and open them up in order to continue moving on. A lot of the areas will have a center kind of core puzzle that you need to solve or find objects for in order to interact and open up the door in order to make it to that next area. For example, in the playground, you'll have to find owl statues that are spread across and then use the owl statues as a weight to use a teeter-totter. Or there's a puzzle with jigsaw pieces that are broken apart and you'll have to explore the areas of this weird decrepit library and swamp-like area in order to put the pieces back together and open up the new areas to continue on. While there is no combat in the game, there are stealth elements. There's basically 2 giant creatures, and the 3rd and 4th areas kind of stalking you. If they get close, you'll hear screaming and voices, and the whole screen starts to shake a bit, making for a whole scary time if any of these things are near, and if it ends up finding you and picking you up, you'll have a small little scare of it kind of grabbing you, but really nothing too intense, even for jump scares. And then you'll have to be able to continue from that last save point, but the game, thankfully, is pretty lenient when it comes to the save points, usually coming as soon as you make it to a new area or right after you ended up solving the previous puzzle. And while I call them puzzles, for the most part it's finding the object and bringing it back to wherever you need it to, such as finding the owl statues, or finding the puzzle pieces and then bringing them back to where you need and putting them in their place so that you can then move on to the next area. The most complex thing may be trying to figure out how you're able to get up to a ledge, or trying to get a certain object to go where you need it to, or sometimes just having to knock something over with another object in order to get inside of it and open it or collect it. Unfortunately, though, the game is relatively short, taking about 1.5 to 2 hours in order to complete it. Now, it may take you a little bit longer if you do some more exploring. There are collectible child's drawings to pick up in each of the area, and a few of these are a little bit more well hidden and off the beaten path, so they may take you a bit to find, but even with that, it won't probably take you that many more hours or minutes even in order to do that. What Among the Sleep, though, does best is the story that it's telling, and I don't want to spoil anything for the core plot here, but of course there's more to the horror than necessarily just being a scary area for the kid to explore. There's a lot to do with the whole psychological issues of being a small child and seeing scary things and the manifestations of your own imagination, especially when you were young. Something as mundane as a book may be scary in the dark because of shadows, and that's really kind of what Among the Sleep amplifies with its gameplay. While playing through the game, I didn't run into any glitches or crashing of any sort. There was a few clipping issues here and there, but it was very minor at most. And there also, of course, was a few times where things just didn't interact the way I was expecting. Using R1 to grab on objects and interact with them, sometimes things didn't push or pull when they should have, or kind of did it in a weird way. But after just a little bit of messing with it, I was able to always get what I needed to happen. So there really isn't too many issues as far as the controls are concerned. The game is available for $19.99 on the PlayStation 4, and for physical collectors, it just came out as a physical disc version from Sodesco. This is kind of why I waited to pick it up and didn't buy the digital version a little over a month ago when it first went up on PSN. Unfortunately, though, even though the game is $19.99, it does not have a Platinum trophy, which is one of the more disappointing things, and I would have loved to have gotten a Platinum in Among the Sleep because I did very much enjoy it when I played it on Steam last year, and again, now that I played it again on PS4. In the end, though, I'm going to be giving Among the Sleep a 6 out of 10. I do wish there was a bit more to the game overall. It's the story. If the story doesn't kind of get you involved or doesn't get you thinking about what the end result is going to end up being, you're probably not going to enjoy Among the Sleep all that much. While it is a horror game in many regards, don't go into it expecting a scare fest, because you're not going to really get it. There are a few moments that are a bit scary and creepy with the atmosphere and a couple of jump scares, but for the most part, it's relatively tame. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.